Minotaur's Labyrinth in Mexico. This baffling tale of the higher strangeness first appeared in the winter 1962 issue of Ray Palmer's The Hidden World magazine, a short-lived publication that had spawned from the controversy surrounding the infamous testimony of Richard Shaver. Unfortunately, only one issue of the magazine is available online, and that is not the issue from which I am drawing this story. Instead, I have found this story mentioned in several other websites, and after enough digging, pun intended, I uncovered a full transcription of this amazing account of a subterranean terror. One Frank J. Mesder of Calexico City, California, wrote the aforementioned magazine to tell them of a bizarre experience he had, which he had come to believe may well have been the work of the notorious Diros. He actually says Tiros in his account, but this would make very little sense in the context of the Shaver mystery. After accidentally stumbling onto some previous issues of the magazine, he had apparently always lusted after the answer of the mysterious of ancient history and the origins of civilization. And he felt he had found just that through the writings of Mr. Shaver. After offering Shaver these generous compliments, he went on to tell his chilling story. Mesder and a group of friends had decided one day in 1960 to go treasure hunting in the interior of Mexico. This expedition would unfortunately yield them no joy, and would instead leave them questioning their previous held views of reality. The group arrived at the designated entrance of the cave system, but before they could enter, Mesder felt a chilling sensation of fear come over him, seemingly without cause. This was apparently a feeling quite unlike anything Frank had experienced before. He said as if something was going to happen to him should he enter those caves. It was clearly not only him suffering under the strange sensation, seeing as neither he nor anyone else in the party felt comfortable going underground that day. Perhaps reluctantly, or perhaps with relief, the group agreed to retreat from the cave entrance and return the next day. When they returned the next day, the zone of terror had seemingly dissipated, and the group descended, led by Frank. The cave was tremendous in size, with passages and paths leading away from it in every direction. Some of these tunnels and chambers were 30 feet high and 100 feet long. They eventually decided that the system was too vast to feasibly explore, so they once again decided to leave the caves. However, when they turned around, they discovered that they were now facing two entry tunnels instead of just the one that they had come through. Baffled, the group elected to investigate. They moved down the strange tunnel, and it seemed to go on forever, winding away into the infinite darkness. Perhaps getting somewhat spooked at this point, the group turned back once more and fled the caves. When Frank's group returned to the village, they happened to strike up a conversation with two indigenous Mexicans who warned them not to enter the enchanted caves. The group was intrigued and asked the two men just what and where the caves were. They were shocked when the pair directed them to the caves that they had just entered. In response to questioning about what exactly happened in the so-called enchanted caves, the men answered that people would sometimes go into them and never come back out, and that if one stayed in them for a while and then tried to leave, they would find that the entrances and tunnels had somehow changed. A chill presumably ran down Frank's back at this point. The exact same thing had happened to his group. However, the changing geography of the anomalous cave system wasn't the strangest thing about them, divulged by the indigenous people. No, that title would have to go to the personal story of the two men. About 10 or 15 years previously, they alleged that they, as well as about 20 or 30 other native Mexican men, had been hired by an American man to investigate the strange caves. 4 or 5 of their numbers came equipped with revolvers, and the rest carried lights and tools. They had been laboring away in the caves for a while when something bizarre and terrifying suddenly made itself known to them. All of a sudden, 2 figures appeared at the far end of the cave. There was a humanoid with the head of a bull, like a bull upright, and a diminutive entity resembling either a little boy or a naked midget. Horrified, the 5 armed men pull out their revolvers, only to find they wouldn't fire, and the lights carried by the rest of the group went out. In the confusion and panic that ensued after this, several of the men were killed in the mad scramble to escape the caves. Since then, no one had been brave enough to venture into the dark labyrinth below. According to ancient Greek mythology, King Minos of Crete had ordered an architect, Leyendas, to construct a labyrinth so intricate that not even one builder himself could find his way out without the use of a plan. This enormous structure was to be used to house the bastard child of the divine bull and Minos' own wife. This child was a monstrous blend of human and bull, and was known as the Minotaur. 7 youths and 7 maidens would be sent to the labyrinth as sacrifices to the Minotaur each year until the hero, Theseus, was finally able to slay the beast. The links between this strange tale and the famous Greek mythological story should be obvious from even a cursory glance. A bull-headed humanoid monstrosity, accompanied by a child, roaming a potentially inescapable network of tunnels and subterranean chambers. History repeats itself. Does myth do the same? The infamous Mexican witch encounter. Location: Valles de la Silla, Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico. Date: January 16, 2004. Time: 03:15 a.m. 21-year-old police officer Leonardo Gallegos was patrolling a section of Alamo Street when he observed what appeared to be the figure of a woman, totally dressed in black cloak-like outfit, descend from a nearby tree towards his patrol car. She appeared to float towards the car at a very high speed. She had large black eyes without any pupils. Terrified, he drove away from the area, but was chased by the flying apparition. He called for assistance over the police radio. The tree that the strange figure descended from was about 6 meters high. The strange flying creature approached his police car and impacted onto the front windshield, pushing it inward, apparently trying to get in using what appeared to be a large pointy set of claws. At this point, Gallegos lost consciousness. In the videotaped interview, Officer Gallegos described the eyes and black gown as in the news article, but adds the description of a helmet or headpiece it was wearing that curved downward to a point at the back of the creature's head. Also, a police officer from Santa Catarina declared that he and 2 more policemen from the Riga police saw exactly the same flying being that Officer Gallegos saw, but 3 days before they saw it flying and decided not to see anything until they heard about Gallegos' case. Furthermore, another party, Norma Alicia, declared on a TV interview that she and her brother also saw a flying humanoid at daytime, and that it looked weird. She said that her brother was so stunned by the sighting that he was sick for almost a week afterwards. Another neighbor in that sector also videotaped several days before a strange flying humanoid and gave the video to the TV station. There will be a link to this interview in the description below. His interview starts at 2:34. I saw a gnome, but I don't think I was supposed to see him. Another Redditor suggested I also post this story here, so here it goes. This is a throwaway account because I have told this story to no one except for my family, who get rather angry at me every time I bring it up. If you have had a similar experience, please feel free to share it. When I was still in elementary school, me and my family used to spend all summer at my great-uncle's house. Me and my family slept in the same room, except for my sister, who slept on a bed in the living room, and my great-uncle, who slept in his own room. That one was a pretty normal day. We went to the beach, we ate some pizza, and then at around 10 p.m. we all went to sleep. At around 4 a.m. I suddenly woke up because someone was throwing things around the kitchen, plastic cups, containers, food, etc. The door was open, so I was able to see a light coming from the kitchen, so when I had enough of all of that noise I got up from the bed. At first, something seemed off. I thought I was having some sort of strange dream, and as any rational kid would do, I tried to see if I could bend fire like in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Who wouldn't want to be a firebender, right? I couldn't, and I wasn't dreaming. My father wasn't in his bed, but I didn't care much since maybe he was just in the bathroom. My great-uncle was fairly old and had trouble sleeping at night, so I thought he just went to the kitchen to get some water. I called out, "Uncle, uncle, are you all right? All this noise has woken me up," I said while making my way into the kitchen. To my surprise, the room was completely empty, but the light was on and the fridge was open, with a can of Coke lying in front of it. I thought to myself, what is this? I looked up to the shelf that was to my right and I saw what was making the noise. Some sort of short creature around 30 centimeters tall, a gnome you'd say, was looking at me, terrified. He was terrified because I saw him. I thought to myself, he is going to hurt me, I'm better off faking a faint, and so I did. After a couple of seconds I opened my eyes and I saw that I wasn't on the kitchen floor anymore. I was in a strange, colorful tunnel. I got scared and again closed my eyes once more. After about a minute that felt like an eternity, I reopened them, and I was laying in my bed. There were still sounds coming from the kitchen, but I was so scared that I just waited for them to stop. And, before sunrise, they did. That wasn't the only encounter I had with that little dude, but I never saw him again. I'd only hear him, because I was and am too scared to see him again. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but I'm sure that I was not supposed to see him. I know it sounds crazy, but feel free to ask me anything about this. One further thing to add. After the experience, I did look it up online, and it is likely that what I was dealing with was a duendes, a gnome in Mexico, as that's where my great-uncle resided. Have you ever heard of the Siguanaba? My mother grew up in a little town in El Salvador. She would tell me and my sisters this story, and she swears it really happened. All of my aunts that grew up with her confirm this story also. Supposedly, my mum's friend's brother woke up one night at around 2 a.m. in the morning. He was around 27, I believe. It was still dark out, but he had to take a leak. This town is poor, so his bathroom was outside. While he was taking a leak, a beautiful woman walked past him. He was a player and went after her. He tried to talk to her, but she kept walking away. She eventually stopped and turned around. When she turned around, he was shocked to see that she had a face of a pig. He immediately started screaming. This woke his family, and they went to his aid. They find him screaming, rolled up in a ball in the middle of the road. They took him to the hospital. He went crazy. Before he went fully crazy, he was able to tell his family what happened. My mum's friend told her what had happened to her brother. All of the neighbors that lived around the man that this happened to heard him screaming also, and looked out their windows and saw him there. My mum said the ghost/creature is called a ciguanaba. She has told me some other crazy stories that have happened to her as well when she was a kid, and my aunts and uncles have told me ones that have happened to them, so let me know if you want to hear them too. El Salvador used to be very haunted according to my family from there. A pale-looking humanoid. I have been in a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend for a couple of years, and every summer and winter break I am able to travel to go see her. This encounter happened about 2 years ago at my girlfriend's house. I should mention that my girlfriend lives on the outskirts of her city in Mexico, where houses are round 200 to 300 yards apart and surrounded by dense woods. Usually days and nights there go about peacefully, accompanied by the sound of the woods and the occasional car passing from others who live nearby. I have always considered her place to be perfect to spend time outdoors, until, that is, this occasion. Honestly, I don't think I have ever been this scared in my life. This sighting will be carved into my mind and memory forever. On a chilly night of December, I was at my girlfriend's house. I had planned to spend the night with her since she would have been by herself that day. Her mum was out of town and she didn't want her to stay by herself either. We were having dinner in the kitchen at around 8 p.m. We chatted about activities that we could do tomorrow, tasks her mum asked her to do, how much we missed each other, among other things. After about an hour of conversation and laughs, we decided to go into the living room and cuddle on the couch, watching TV. We both got up and put the dishes in the sink. She went into her bedroom, and I went outside to the bathroom. The house layout consisted of a long corridor that connected pretty much every room in the house, and the back door at the end of the corridor which led to the patio. The patio was open, full of trees, plants, and the only other thing separating the patio from the woods was a fence made up of stones and barbed wire that stood about 1 meter tall. Halfway down the patio there was the bathroom, being lit by a single and weak light bulb. So if anybody wanted to go, they had to walk outside, even if it had to be in the middle of the night. I thought to myself, I'm not going to this toilet at night. I remember when I opened the back door and stepped into the patio, a cold breeze stroked my face and sent shivers across my back. So I hurried to get back as quickly as possible because, to be honest, I was a little spooked about going outside in the darkness, knowing that the woods are pretty much a few steps away. I finished doing my business, washed my hands, and started walking back, being careful not to trip on something because the light bulb was almost non-existent. I was about halfway when I heard a noise to my left, like somebody stepping on a branch, and it broke. I stopped and quickly turned, trying to see what made the noise, but I could only see a portion of the fence and nothing but darkness beyond that. However, I had this weird feeling that someone or something was watching me. Something on the other side of that fence. I stood there in silence for around 30 seconds, listening to the surroundings, only to notice the crickets had stopped chirping. I got a bit freaked out because I knew for sure that they were chirping when I first went out. I was somewhat scared to move, but I did anyways, almost running to get back inside as soon as possible. When I returned, I went to my girlfriend, who was already in the living room, laying down on the couch with a blanket on top. She noticed I was a bit agitated and asked me what was wrong. I told her that her patio was scary. I said it jokingly, of course, as I didn't want to tell her what I was really feeling because she hates anything to do with horror or scary stuff in general. I decided to brush it off, so I went around the couch and sat on the other end of it, putting my girlfriend's legs on my lap, and asked what she was watching on the TV. I turned to my right and noticed there was a huge window on the side of the wall that gave me a perfect view of the patio. I didn't see it before because it was next to a cabinet being covered on the way into the living room. Now that I knew it, I kept turning to see outside, still thinking about how scary it looked. As we were watching a boring documentary, I took off my girlfriend's socks and started rubbing her feet below the blanket. After all, it was a chilly night and her feet were cold. We didn't have a conversation. I was getting sleepy, but after around 20 minutes I started hearing noises outside. Noises that seemed to be coming from the patio. I grabbed the controller and muted the TV to make sure what I was hearing was right. And I was. It sounded like tiny twigs breaking and grass being brushed. I quickly turned to my right to see out the window, but I could only see the plants and part of the trunk from the big tree. The noise, although faint, stopped for a few seconds, resuming a few moments later and stopping again. I stood frozen, watching outside the window, almost as if waiting for a thing to appear. I asked my partner in a whisper, "What was that noise?" But after I didn't get a reply, I turned around and stood up, a little to see that she had closed her eyes and had fallen asleep. I was a bit freaked out, but I chose to believe it was probably a coyote or some other animal that lurks around the woods at night. I kept watching the TV, muted, waiting for the noise to start again, but after a while I realized it had stopped. I turned around once more to see outside the window, and I felt my heart sink to my stomach. The first thing I noticed when I looked outside that time was a faint image of a grey, pale and tall humanoid figure peeking from behind the side of a big tree, staring right back at me. I suddenly froze in fear, not wanting to even slightly move or breathe. I watched this thing as it watched me, even though I couldn't see its eyes because of the poor lighting, but I knew it was watching me. I knew it was aware of me. Somehow I felt it. The creature was, like I said, pale, really pale. I could see the contrast between its skin and the bark of the tree. The creature was very thin. It had really skinny shoulders and torso, as well as an elongated neck. It looked like it was around 6 or 7 feet tall. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, I could not distinguish in detail the facial features because of how dark it was, but I could perfectly picture in my head the shadowy areas around where eyes would have been for a person and a huge other one for where a mouth would be. The thing, it was sort of grinning. At this point I was trembling a little, and I wanted to let my girlfriend know what I was witnessing, but I also didn't want to move a muscle or break eye contact with that thing. I felt like I needed to remain still or play dead to lose its attention, but no, the creature kept staring at me, not moving an inch, like it was trying to do the same. Then, to turn things worse, the creature started to make an echoey clicking sound, kind of like a frog but slower. I noticed it begin to turn its head to the left side and turn back to look at me really fast. I didn't know what to think anymore. All I wanted was my girlfriend to wake up and prove to me that the thing was real. I began to whisper her name between my teeth and mouth, not even wanting to move my jaw, but she didn't wake up, and the thing kept doing the same, turning its head to the left and back to me just as fast as the first time. The creature crouched, kind of like when a big predator cat is hunting, and laid low, preparing to attack. I thought to myself, what the fuck? I whispered, I know, stupid, but I didn't even think through the fact that if I woke my girlfriend up, she would start moving and the thing would notice both of us. But I was scared that I kept trying. This went on for maybe less than 15 minutes before I realized I still had my girlfriend's foot in my hand below the blanket, so the thing wouldn't be able to see me moving. Only using my wrist, I slightly pulled her foot back and forth, whispering her name again and again, but no response. Then I stood in shock when I saw the creature stand up again and start walking backwards, still looking at me, and disappearing into the darkness of the patio. Doing the clicking sound again, I passed saliva and blinked a few times, realizing my eyes itched from staring at the creature the whole time. For some reason I couldn't turn my head around. I kept looking in the direction where the creature disappeared, listening for sounds and waiting for it to appear once again. A few minutes passed and I took a chance to turn around. Slowly, as if in slow motion, I turned my head to my girlfriend and started calling her name louder while pushing her leg and quickly scribbling my fingers to the sole of her foot to wake her up. Her foot jerked and she started turning. I stood up to her shoulders and patted her, whispering, "Hey, baby, wake up." She opened her eyes and she squinted at me, adjusting in the light of the TV, wondering why I'd woken her up. I kept telling her to remain still and silent when I heard the sound again. She looked at me, noticed the concern in my eyes, and asked, "What's wrong?" "Shh, be quiet," I followed, putting 2 fingers on her lips and looking into her eyes. I could see that she was getting freaked out, and I didn't blame her. I would be too if someone woke me up looking scared and telling me to be quiet. The clicking sound went off again, but it was louder this time, almost as if the thing was on the other side of the window. This time both of us heard the noise, and again stood looking at each other in silence, getting more and more scared. "What is that?" my girlfriend asked, but I remained quiet. Again in slow motion, I started to turn my head to the window to check, and there it was. The thing was right outside the window, only a couple feet away, staring right back at me. This time I had a clearer vision of how it looked. I was wrong. I petrified in fear when I noticed it didn't have a mouth where a person's would have been. It instead had a mouth on its neck, which was open horizontally, not vertically. As its mouth opened, it vibrated with the clicking sound, and hundreds of really small razor-like teeth shined with the window glare. It had an oval-shaped head, eyes that were as dark as the night, and its gaze, I felt it piercing through my soul. I started shaking, breathing faster, not believing what I was seeing. My girlfriend peeked over my shoulder to see what I was seeing, and instantly I felt her body tense up under me as she started to ask me in a trembling voice what that thing was. But no answers came out of me. Now we were both scared, too scared to even move a muscle. After the humanoid noticed my girlfriend move, it gave a step forward and lowered its head, almost as if it was scanning us. We jumped in fear after seeing a thing doing it because we thought it would start coming towards us. My heart was pounding so fast I thought I would faint any time. Then the thing began to walk slowly to its right side, in the direction where the door is to the corridor. It was resuming the clicking sounds. If you have seen the movie Signs, you might remember the scene where the humanoid came out of the bushes outside of the house. That would be an accurate representation of what I saw. We took a good look at every inch of that thing's body. It walked with its head turned to us. After we lost sight of it through the window, we both sat up and looked at each other when suddenly we heard something scratch the metal door that led to the corridor, as if the thing was grazing its finger on it. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my girlfriend's wrist and jolted out of the living room, locking ourselves in her bedroom. We sat on the floor right next to the bedroom, hiding in case that the thing got inside. The scratching sounds continued and my girlfriend started to sob, still asking what we saw. I felt powerless, knowing I couldn't do much to reassure her. I could only hold her and hope that things or the thing would leave. The noise continued for about 3 minutes, then it suddenly stopped. We began hearing footsteps all around the house. We kept turning our head to the directions that we heard the noise come from. Eventually the noises stopped, and after an hour or so, we figured the creature had left. My girlfriend, still with tears in her eyes, told me if we could lay in bed. I agreed because my back was hurting from being in that crouch position for over an hour. We slowly crawled into bed, making the least noise possible, and covered ourselves with blankets. "Don't worry, babe. Everything is going to be okay tomorrow. Try to get some sleep," I whispered to her as I tightly tightened my grip around her and pulled her into me. She didn't reply, but after a while she fell asleep. I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. I kept my eyes open, listening to every sound around us. The next day we didn't even want to touch the subject. All we said was that the creature was not from this world. My girlfriend said she felt the creature's gaze pierce into her, almost as if the thing was feeling with its pure sight. Nothing else was said. We were just left there, sort of traumatized. I realized she was going to have to put up with that fear of going outside in the future, and I didn't want that thing anywhere near her again or her family. Days after the encounter, we both suffered from nightmares. She mentioned that she sometimes wakes up in the middle of the night screaming and trembling, and wouldn't be able to stop until her mother went to check on her. The fences that separated the patio and the woods have been redone since, and they now stand 2 meters tall, blocking any easy access from the woods. Before this, they had to make sure they didn't have to go outside at night. They haven't had any other encounters again, but my girlfriend insists that the patio gives her the chills at night. I keep wondering what that thing was, that humanoid creature. Could it be, I don't know, an alien? Kia ora, family. Grim here. Thank you for making it to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed these creepy humanoid encounters. If you did, please remember, like and subscribe. Do the usual things that help out small channels. I'm not going to drag this out for too long because I like to just keep moving. So remember, wherever you are, be safe, have an amazing night or day, and I am Grim, and as always, I am signing off. Adios, amigos.